There's currently 1.3 million cubic metres of contaminated water, but this is not any kind of final figure. This will continue to accumulate for as long as water will be needed for cooling, and indeed for as long as contaminated water is accumulating in the buildings. The rationale for why they're doing this is that they need the space to progress the decommissioning works, to dismantle eventually the contaminated buildings and reactors and remove the spent fuel and the melted fuel first. That's the rationale. But the decommissioning plan, as I read the situation, is increasingly behind schedule and increasingly unlikely to be possible. And probably an increasing number of experts in Japan seem to think that this is really not possible. It's just too complicated. When even until very recently, all the robots that were sent in to the containment structures failed within hours because of the high radioactivity. So these discharges are planned to continue for 40 years, but because this water will continue to accumulate, I think there's a good chance that it may go on for rather longer. But the isotope concentration in many of the tanks is very much higher than the regulatory limits. This was with already treated water, and 72% of the treated water in the tanks did not meet the regulatory standard for one or more isotopes. And for some of them, it was almost 20,000 times higher than the regulatory level. So extremely high. So there was not really convincing evidence that the purification system worked. This is from the World Nuclear Industry Status Report last year, and still only 35% of the stored treated water is within the discharge limit. Carbon-14 and tritium are not removed by the purification, but I think the problem of tritium discharge, which has really been largely sidelined, deserves re-evaluation, because I think it's a really neglected hazard, and it may well explain, for example, the increases in leukemia, childhood leukemia that we see around nuclear power plants, which have not really been explained but are very real. So this is also from Ken Bussela's paper in Science in 2020, but showing that for a number of important isotopes, there's a significant concentration factor, so concentration up the food chain. Also, this radioactivity moves in different ways, not just through ocean currents, but also through organisms at the top of the food chain that move. Seabirds, sharks, sea mammals, whales, seals, dolphins, seabirds. And it was documented already 1 year after the disaster that tuna contaminated with isotopes that came from Fukushima were found off the Californian coast. So radioactivity will obviously move in the ocean in different ways. Repeatedly, a number of special rapporteurs have criticised the water discharge. The Pacific Island nations have been very concerned about this, and also China has been quite vocally concerned about this. The Japanese government did not adequately consider the alternatives, which multiple groups have proposed, including the Pacific Islands experts. Some of the alternatives include long-term storage. After 60 years, more than 90% of the tritium will have decayed away, and many of the other isotopes, cesium and strontium, will be less than 25% of the original amounts. One other proposal which has been recommended is that this cleaned water be used to make concrete in structural applications where it has little contact with people, under freeways, bridges, tsunami barriers, foundations for large buildings, those sorts of things. The beta radiation from tritium and any other beta emitters, obviously, cesium and strontium, would also be contained by that concrete. I think one of the key issues about this is that it's a really dangerous precedent. And in planning this discharge, Japan is violating multiple commitments that they have made in international law. The London Convention and the protocol that strengthens it, dumping of radioactive waste at sea, and this is waste.